Number 148. Wind Serpent Ibushi. A wonderful design and a good fight. I do wish Ibushi was given a little bit more time in the spotlight though. Ibushi also has a wondrous theme, but that's something his queen does just as well, if not better. I really like the Storm Serpents. I find them impressively compelling, and Ibushi is my preferred design amongst them. But outside of that, it is sadly outclassed. Though I will say, I do see a world in which Ibushi is a monster that could show up in an actual locale. And if that were to happen and be done in such a way that has Ibushi really wreaking havoc, I think he'd rocket up so high in my fondness levels. But as is, in the moment, Ibushi is a good 4-star monster, but seriously, he could be so cool if they let him just kind of wander around. My absolute favorite monster in the franchise. He has an amazing design, one that perfectly mixes its cultural inspirations as the god of wind, with a perfect marriage of draconic and mollusk sea life elements that enhances it tenfold. It is a very unique personality and presentation that it shares with Narwa, of course. The floating upside down and its almost leisurely movements across the air give off the impression of something it's so far removed from normal creatures that it doesn't feel like interacting with them in a proper manner, as a god should. The fight is really solid. Well, when it actually received one. Weapons are all pretty good too, with a nice little niche. The armor has a cool gimmick, even if it's not meta or anything, it's just kind of fun to use, and the theme is Kino. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk on my never-ending love for this floaty noodle simp. Absolutely insane design and one of the best monster themes in the series. 4 out of 5, just because the fight is a little bit wonky, but it's still fun as hell, and it and Narwa make a great duo. Love this guy's design. Weird, almost aquatic, parasitic looking creature. Would have fit into the Coral Highlands, and I kinda hate the female armor. The vocals in this theme are a great touch too. As much as I do kinda dislike the possession of the twins, the fight is decent, and my monkey brain likes breaking his rocks. They probably could have done a better job integrating Ibushi into the story though. I love both of the Wind Serpents visually. Their hunts, on the other hand, feel like an absolute walk in the park, which is really weird for endgame boss monsters. Ibushi suffered the fate of being locked in rampages for most of base Rise, which means you could only ever fight him while you were super buffed up, and he was basically just a punching bag that ignored you. When he finally got a proper hunt with Allmother in Master Rank, he absolutely shone. Probably my favorite half of the Allmother hunt, since although far less difficult, he isn't so spammy and spectacular and feels like an actual battle. 4 out of 5. Number 147. Very quickly back to Jacob, he also claimed this next entry. Kushala Daora.
Kushala Daora, in my opinion, is underappreciated as the original Elder Dragon flagship monster. And I believe that's simply from the lack of players in the community who have actually slayed this monster in the generation it debuted in, 2nd generation. To me, when Monster Hunter asks you to play by its rules, and when you're forced to solve the puzzle that is Kushala's wind barrier, it's an extremely satisfying fight. Here's what people have to say about Kushala. Soul Sketch says, such a cool design, both thematically and ecologically. Having this dragon clad in armor that can leave entire iron husks may be the raddest thing I've ever heard. His fight wavers depending on the game with his aerial shenanigans. With the Rise version, he may be at his best being more land-based and having the weakness to poison, though I feel some of his iconic difficulty is gone with his lack of wind aura and flight-based attacks. Mason Dowd 9591 says, an outstanding monster in basically every way. Iconic gear, an insanely badass design, and a generally good fight. Monster Hunter World was a strange blip for Kushala because the fight is really good in Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate and presumably before. I have yet to fight it in Monster Hunter 2 DOS or Free to Be Night. And fun afterwards in Monster Hunter Rise and Sunbreak. He's basically the cornerstone of the entire Elder Dragon class, and will forever be one of the best. Lawnrad B says, I used to think he was kind of boring, but man has he grown on me over time. He has some of the most interesting ecology out of all the Elder Dragons. Feels like the potential of his fight was finally tapped into in Monster Hunter Rise. It always felt shallow before then. Majin Matt Plays says, as someone who came into the series with Monster Hunter Rise, Monster Hunter World Kushala is #NotMyKushala. I think Kushala is an incredibly interesting monster marred by mediocre to bad fights for most of the series, and facing the sad reality that he was made in the 2nd generation and was obviously the core Elder Dragon. While I think his most recent incarnation is his best ever, and I adore him, I hope they can do a little more with him to bring him up to the level of monsters like Teostris 5th gen upgrades, Namiel, and the other fantastic Elder Dragons we've gotten in recent years. 4 out of 5. And then finally, the Right Trousers 343 says, cool design. What we know of the ecology is cool, and I'd like to know more. I'm not sure what the unifying motif across its gear is, considering the weapons are all animals. High rank is samurai armor, and G rank is Egyptian, I think, but it's still cool regardless. Inconsistent about how much of a problem it is across the games, but Monster Hunter Rise's version is fun, and so is Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate's. I don't like it in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate though. Still, for such a simple design, and with such an interesting theme, it's a very cool theme that's so musically bold, and a monster that will always have conversations around it, that manages to garner at least some attention in whatever game it's in. I gotta pay my dues. I'm not sure how it's going to develop, but Kushala is always an open question that can go in many directions. I don't think it's completely fulfilled its potential at this point, that it necessarily needs another generation before we see it, but if it does take another generation to make some room, that's fine too. I'm going to add my own comment here. Yes, the weapons are all based off of animals. I'm not sure if necessarily the high rank is based off of samurai armor, or if the G rank is based off Egyptian. As far as I know, and this is a shot in the dark, it's actually influenced by Eastern Asian sort of cultures. Stuff like around the Himalayas, like Tibet or Mongolia. A lot of the early Eastern Asian armor. I think that's what it's supposed to be inspired by, because I think Kushala is meant to be inspired by Eastern Asian storm dragons. At least, that's what I believe.
Number 146. Hallowed Jhen Mohran. Hallowed Jhen Mohran is definitely one of the subspecies of all time. Like many Siege monster subspecies, he barely changes when compared to the regular form. Where Hallowed differentiates himself is really just the color scheme, one of the most beautiful looking monsters in the series, and would love to see him updated in the 6th generation. 4 stars. Jhen Mohran is absolutely amazing. This guy, though, being locked behind hunting one of every monster is not that fun. Also, he ain't even much different. I like the colors a lot, but he doesn't stand out much besides that. Still kind of epic, though. 4 stars. Very beautiful, and its attacks are a little bit more predictable. Great Blade Master set, but I wish he was more different, and that his weapons had a little bit more of a recolor to them. 3 stars. Base Jhen Mohran is pretty dang good, and Hallowed maintains that, but I'm knocking it down for not doing enough different. It looks great, but I feel that's where most of its uniqueness is, rather than the fight. It tweaks a few things, not enough to be a substantial change, though, in my opinion. Number 145. Oroshi Kirin. I like the classic Kirin, but I prefer the Oroshi, because its moves have more intuitive tells for some reason. Also, the black coloration with the purple horn is sick as hell. The Horn Slam and the Frost Bubble are really cool additions. Too bad it didn't make its way into Iceborne, because the HD glow-up could have been really cool. Cool monster, cool subspecies, 4 stars. 4 out of 5. I love Oroshi's colors. A black and purple, and those combined with the ice makes a wonderful mix of coloration. It's still a Kirin fight, which is kind of annoying, especially for an Insect Glaive user. I would love to see this guy come back for an upgrade. I'm gonna give him a 5 stars. I like base Kirin, and Oroshi is an awesome subspecies. I like his colors and fight, and his shift to ice is really cool. I'm still salty we never got him in Iceborne. He would have been perfect to pair in the Elatrion update, and he's one of the few monsters I still genuinely think is missing from Iceborne. It's Kirin, but Velkhana. It's literally the best way to describe it. Does that make that bad? No. I'll take this Kirin over the regular any day. We need more ice Elder Dragons, and for being so late to the party, he's really solid. He'd be awesome in Wilds if the regular Kirin comes back as well. 4 stars. Number 144. Aknosom. Aknosom is pretty cool. It's in the same boat as Malfestio for being a more bird-like bird wyvern. The fight is quite good, nothing too special, but not bad by any means, even though it's an absolute pain during rampages. One thing I will mention is that we already have a fire-based bird wyvern in the form of Yian Kutku, and I have to say that I definitely prefer the latter. I don't think Aknosom should be the default early game fire monster going forward, but I wouldn't mind seeing it again. Maybe they can let it live exclusively in forest regions next time, as it It looks a little out of place in a locale like the Frost Islands. All in all, Aknosom is a good take on a more graceful early game monster. A lot of them are cute or just goobers or both, which isn't a bad thing, but it's nice to have some more variety. Yeah, I don't have a lot of strong feelings about the Feathered Frenzy, but I do like it. Combining a dancing crane with the one-legged umbrella yokai is such a no-brainer. Very enjoyable low-rank fight, very good balance of animal and monster, and personality-rich animations. I wouldn't mind seeing this one again in another game. Probably my favorite of the early bird wyvern archetype. Love the design and the way it moves, and also love its knightly weapons and armor. Has some of the best options for a female knight set out there. I love Aknosom. It's such a unique monster compared to its relatives, with a great design, unique fights, and a unique use of fire. My only complaint with Aknosom is that its umbrella pose isn't defensive. I thought that pose would have been like Daimyo's defensive position, so I was disappointed that it didn't have that utility. Still though, quite an amazing monster. Love Aknosom. The head fan changing shape for what it wants to do, the Kutku type bouncing fireballs, its sounds and its animations, they're all awesome and fun for such an early game monster. Granted, he takes quite a bit from Kutku, but I think he uses it to good effect, and I adore the very bird-looking bird monster. Like with Pookie or Toby, honestly, his design and personality you feel through his fight just put him at 5 stars for me. I really hope his Kutku-ness means that this goofy bird fellow will return for Wilds. Number 143, Blackveil, Vaal Hazak. I honestly really love Blackveil's ecology. Where regular Vaal is totally in tune with its home, this variant is an intruder. Something that doesn't belong. Something that kills everything in its path because this new environment isn't adapted to its abilities. Seeing those Murnos die in its intro is terrifying. They are completely defenseless against the effluvium that is their end. The day a Blackveil wanders through the ancient forest is like doomsday for its inhabitants. A blind, extremely powerful creature threatening an ecosystem that isn't its own, where it would normally help the Rotten Vale stay in balance. Blackveil's ecology single-handedly makes me appreciate the regular version a lot more, and it would be 5 stars if I didn't consider the design a downgrade. I wish both were present in Master Rank, but under no circumstances do I wish the variant did not exist. Absolutely disgusting. I love it. But I love it less than the original. It's definitely a good variation of Vaal, and seems like it would be more applicable to reappear in new games, especially if the weather hazards that Wilds is introducing become a mainstay feature that Elder Dragons can bring in. That or a nasty-ass fungus cave biome, something like that. Base Vaal is tailor-made for the Rotten Vale specifically. While the Ancient Forest doesn't fit like a glove for Blackveil, the fact that Blackveil is less dependent on a map makes it so that there is places in the world where Vaal Hazak can exist outside the context of Monster Hunter World. I'd be very okay with this one coming back if we can't get the original. I like Blackveil's fight more than the regular Vaal Hazak. He gave me a lot of trouble in the beginning. I like his ultimate where he throws poisonous spores everywhere. The gear is also very good. 5 stars. I feel like Blackveil gets just a little too much hate, you know? I do agree that his body spores can be an annoyance in close quarters. However, it's perfectly avoidable with some patience, and I believe you can force them off with some persistence, even if that is difficult. That being said, design-wise, he is awesome. Personally, I like it more so than his base species. Can't forget to give points for his unique gimmicks and biology. It's just perfect. Love him to death. He could be in my top 5 with some adjustments to his fight. Now this is a variant, a Vaal that wandered into a more lush environment, the Rotten Dragon becoming a host for new life. Just not the kind of life that most would appreciate. Covered in fungal spores, this Elder Dragon looks like a walking lab accident, especially fitting with the Resident Evil crossover quest that he had. The mold covers up over his eyes, leading to the titular Black Veil of the name. It's always kind of cool to see the moniker of a variant or subspecies or deviant actually making sense with the monster itself. As a concept, I do like that the rich fungal growth of the new world reacted in such a wild manner to this wandering dragon, creating something brand new when it left its native zone. I do wish we still had the regular Vaal in Master Rank, but I am actually fine with the Blackveil replacement. AT Vaal got nothing really new, but Blackveil added new moves to the list that gave it better ways to deal with hunters, hugging its flanks. The damn disgusting new super move where it spreads spores all around, creating varied zones of effluvia, does a decent job of making it a threat. Still not the hardest Elder Dragon, but a lot more tough to deal with. Like with the regular Vaal, the gear is grand. It's got an even better health regeneration system with a Lich design to this set, looking like a Lord of the Undead. The weapons continue to be damn solid at dishing out dragon elements, though with the Kiar and Safi weapons, they have some competition now for sure. Basically, just a better Vaal Hazak, though I love both of them in their own way. A 5 out of 5. Number 142, Almudron. The fight is pretty good, and the design is alright in my opinion. One thing that bothers me though is how all ground is equal for him. He's supposed to be a mud swimmer, but it's a little jarring when you're fighting him in a place that's just solid ground and he digs through it effortlessly. His ability to create big piles of mud that wall you out, but can also be stood on, is really underutilized. Maybe if he was in a game with normal mounting, it would have been a much more interesting mechanic. He was another of these base Rise monsters that I just didn't really get attached to. 3 stars I think is fair. I think a different game would serve him better if they just limit where he can pull off his digging moves and made his mud piles more meaningful to the hunt. And also probably reduced his size a bit, because that thing is huge. An absolutely awesome design that takes so many great animals and the yokai and melds it all together into something special. The way he controls mud is really cool, and he's a great addition to the Leviathan category. Really helps diversify their cast. His gear is awesome as well, and while his fight is mostly okay, he can get kind of wiggly and annoying with how much reach he has with a lot of his attacks. So I think he could do to have a bit of refinement in the fight area, so that kind of docks him a point. I also wish that they'd give him a turf war with Mizutsune and Tetranodon. There's an awesome bit of art of him fighting Tetranodon, and the dirty mud Leviathan versus the clean bubble Leviathan feels like a matchup that would make for a perfect rivalry, but overall, he does get a 4. I gotta say, Rise cooked with the new monsters. I love Almudron, the way he looks, with the catfish whiskers, the gold mixed in with the mud, how his tail is reminiscent of a paintbrush as he creates mud waves and platforms with the ground. All of that is amazing. One of the few monsters that alters or adds to the terrain around it. I think in Master Rank, his mud structures are super cool and make for a really fun fight with the jumping attacks and strategies that you can use to deal with the mud. I love the concept, I love the fight, 5 out of 5. Definitely one of my favorite new monsters from Rise. I love his attacks actually requires you to understand him, and he is one of the few that wants you to use the wire bug. And his design is also really good. He doesn't let the myth inspiration make him look out of place, and he also looks pretty similar to Mizutsune and might be pretty closely related, which is kind of ironic actually. 4 out of 5. I'm not the biggest fan of Almudron, not a hater though, but I would love if it returned to Wilds, way more in proportion to how much I like it regularly. Mud in Rise versus in World is much less intimidating, so assuming Wilds acts more as a World sequel, Almudron would have a much more intimidating fight, not to mention how Rise's wire bugs made the mud pillars almost irrelevant. So a game without wire bugs, where you have to climb up the pillars to get the aerial advantage on Almudron, would definitely make the fight more memorable. Number 141, Gobul. No irony, Gobul is phenomenal. I always remembered loving the fight, though it has been a little bit. The hiding in the lake bed is super cool, and it makes it the only monster I have actually just not seen when I pass by it. The entire concept for Gobul has so much potential, and I beg for his return whenever Underwater comes back. 4.1 stars. I like this silly dude a lot. The thing about Gobul is that he is the one instance in a video game where an enemy having camouflage actually worked on me. The paintball ran out at a very bad time and I was swimming around the murky waters of the tri-flooded forest for 20 minutes, looking for his seaweed-like whiskers before I found him and he timed me out. That was probably the most pissed I had ever been in my 1,000+ hours of Monster Hunter, and I broke my controller out of sheer rage. I still play with the broken controller 2 years later, and I have a lot of respect for Gobul. Also, the frog fishing mechanic is super fun with him, even if Plusyoff technically did it first. I fought this guy in Try, and I love his fight. It feels so creative in so many ways. The hiding, the water vortex, the fishing him out with the frog, and the way he puffs up and rolls around on land all look amazing, and it feels good to fight against him. As well, I love his design. I give this guy a 5 out of 5. Perfect underwater monster. I miss my boy, but him being so tied to underwater is his real detriment. But he's such a cool concept. A camouflage ambush predator where you can actually get a carve or two before he attacks is just what this series needs more of in its roster. However, his land moveset is atrocious. It kind of makes him a pushover. 4 out of 5, I miss you, buddy. Ballsy move on Capcom to make a new classification of monsters just for their second Leviathan to be pure nightmare fuel. And honestly, it worked out perfectly. They introduced Royal Ludroth, which may or not be a cute monster that doesn't make you feel all that intimidated by him. Then Gobul appears, and holy, does he make you fear him. His design, appearance, and overall vibes make you question if you're ready to be a hunter or not. But when you finally take him down, you feel like you can take on the world after that. 4.5 out of 5. Number 140, Black Diablos. A begrudging 4. Black Diablos is a huge rival monster to me, and she kicks my ass every time she shows up after a break. I remember learning the Sonic Flash cycle to get through her G-rank quests in 3U. I prefer her faster, tenser movement. I love an aggressive monster that doesn't let you take a breath, but she unfortunately doesn't bring enough of her own moves to the table for her to avoid my Diablos burnout. Love the ecology, and again, Black's good no matter what you put it on. Those traits barely bump her up to 3 out of 5. Black Diablos is a monster that feels different every game she's in. In World, she's a fantastic upgrade in difficulty, and the fact that she turf wars with regular Diablos fits with the lore, and I just adore it. 3U Black Diablos can suck my left foot. She's very slapped together, only being a speed increase with one new move. Her fight feels bull most of the time. Her inconsistency throughout the games means I can't quite rank her at the top for me, but her design is amazing, and the positives of her world appearance bump her up for me. 3 out of 5. Black Diablos is the best first-gen subspecies, and it's not even close. Yeah, she isn't a big mechanical change from regular Diablos, but she is just fast and aggressive, and sometimes that's all you need. The new attack she has really enhanced the core Diablos experience. The burrow cannon forces you to think quickly when she is underground to prepare you for what she will do next, and she took White Monoblos' supercharge and improved on it, allowing it to track your movements and inflict a guaranteed stun if it does hit. Not only does she feel the most distinct from her base form of all the first generation subspecies, but she also has the most interesting lore, with her aggression resulting from her being amped up on breeding hormones. Even if it really makes it seem like she should be a variant, but those didn't exist yet. 4 out of 5, too horny for me. Black Diablos actually feels threatening due to the increased aggression. So much aggression that the technically variant feels warranted. Just when I feel like I'm comfortable with the Diablos fight, I take on Black Diablos to remember how scary and different a little extra aggression feels. Number 139, Dreadking Rathalos. Dreadking is a monster that I think suffered from being released when Rathalos itself was a mediocre fight. But I think we got a glimpse at Dreadking's greatness in Risebreak. Both Apex Rathalos and Silverlos in Risebreak take several of Dreadking's most important features and showcase how much fun they can be when given to a modern Rathalos. I think Dreadking is one of the few 6 out of 5 monsters for me, but I'm gonna go with a 5 out of 5. Fantastic armor designs, cool weapons, and the coolest looking version of my favorite non-elder monster. All hail the King of Flames, lest the world burn around us. 2 stars. Dreadking looks kinda cool, making Rathalos with a darker color palette, but that's about it. He flies so much more than the normal Rathalos, and before Rise and Sunbreak's iteration that actually made that kind of flight combat fun to go up against. Plus, the gimmick of having to break the wings before being able to flash bomb it, that can get frustrating. The enhanced fire is cool, but having to wait all that time while he's flying around kinda sucks. Dreadking would be my absolute favorite Rathalos variation if he was in a game where Rathalos is a good fight. The changes to his design are a lot more noticeable than Dread Queen's. A more crimson red, with some flame-colored wings, plus the bigger wing talons are solid and memorable. The fight, as I stated, suffers from being an old gen Rathalos. He spends a lot of the time in the air, and the moves are pretty nah. However, the new moves Dread King adds are fantastic, especially the massive bomb attack. They're fun and unique and go a long way in making Rathalos' kind of mid-GU fight into something more fun. Unfortunately, it doesn't go far enough. I can really see me adoring Dread King if brought back in the next portable game or whenever. As it is though, it is a 3 out of 5. Everyone hates this guy, but 5 stars from me. The design is sick, easily the coolest looking Rathalos, plus the fireball nukes are extremely cool. Also, he actually has a good fight. You have to fight to break the wings before you can topple him out of the air. And while not as advanced as Rise Rathalos, he often uses ground to air combos, albeit more simple stuff like landing to do a pin before jumping back to do a fireball if he missed. He flies low, so dunking his head with Greatsword when he does his aerial pivots or countering his talon swipes with Valor Longsword feels pretty amazing. Number 138, Thunder Serpent Narwa. Narwa is a monster that I have a lot of appreciation and memories of. As I stated with Ibushi, I adore the funky designs the Rise Serpents have. Narwa herself has some lovely yellows and oranges. The belly sack I can see why it would be a little off-putting, but I think it brings the design together perfectly. The fight is great. The use of artillery is wonderfully creative, even if it's pretty easy to forget about or ignore outside of the ultimate, which is fantastic by the way. The fight overall I've always thought of as a bullet hell. I'm not sure how else to describe it, but it's a very unique feeling for a Monster Hunter fight. Narwa was the first final boss I faced off in Monster Hunter. And while due to Rise's unfortunate development, she didn't really feel like a full conclusion, she still was a great note to end on. But she gets overshadowed by the Allmother a lot, which is why she gets a 4 out of 5. The song slaps like almost no other. The fight is really creative, being a monster that never touches the ground and has a very weird pattern of electrical attacks. The story is great. Ibushi is a perfect supporting monster to bring out the good aspects of Narwa even more. It makes you use your tools to the fullest, like needing to fly high with the wire bugs to dodge some attacks like the Dragonator's Spiral of Doom, or if you want to focus on that tail. So yeah, almost perfect. I prefer Narwa's fight and theme over Ibushi's. The designs are equally good for me. I always like when the monsters have differences between male and female. Narwa's array of attacks is fun and flashy. I especially like the lightning wheels, as it's a unique take on the element. Plus, avoiding them is pretty fun. 4 stars. An excellent final boss for Rise. She makes great use of the wire bugs in the fight with all of the floating platforms. All that results in a battle that is rewarding to learn and is very important to the identity of Rise. Same as with her mate, Thunder Serpent Narwa gets 4 from me. Again, the appearance looks fantastic and strange. The upside down floating along with the body structure makes Narwa feel alien far more than any other Elder Dragons and even other final bosses. The colors are beautiful with a cascade of yellows and oranges across the entire body. Combined with the massive golden rings and beams of lightning, it is a visual feast of a monster. The fight is again very good, but it has a bit of that spectacle over substance feel, just like Ibushi, particularly utilizing her magnetic and lightning abilities. Dodging through the rings and blasts is a lot of fun, and hopping into the big siege weapons dragged out of the ground by her is also extremely fun to do. The first few times, at least. Then it starts to feel like a little bit of a checklist. Oh yeah, we didn't have to trigger the first stage, so let's now hit it with the cannons again. Alright, now pop the Dragonator. She's very predictable, making the fight a little less interesting overall, combined with some pretty easy to read and dodge attacks. Again, she's good, but held back by a couple of those factors. Number 137, Barroth. A solid introduction to Brute Wyverns. Big thing I appreciate about it is how it introduces the different advantages of cutting and blunt weapons, and the advantages of hunting with others with its head and tail. Love this angry goober. Barroth was my first real wall, taught me how to play patient and position myself, and it was the monster that got me to fall in love with the series. As a tri-hunter, Barroth is still probably my favorite early game monster, and I'll die on that hill. Its ecology is awesome and creates dynamic mechanics in-game, whether it's armor that changes weaknesses or mud bombs that create hazards and traps. Barroth's little steam whistle before it comes barreling down on you like a runaway train is one of the most iconic tells in the series. Its armor is great, and though I don't absolutely love the G-rank chess piece or priest kind of vibe, the low to high rank armor has some of my favorite pieces, including a sick T-visor on the gunner cap for the Mandalorian aesthetic I crave. Can't say enough about this adorably bumbly idiot that would crush me during a tantrum. Seeing Barroth's glow up in world and reunited in the sandy plains and rise were the best proud parent full circle moments in the series for me. 5 out of 5. Fun and extensive ecology, unique design, simple early game brute wyvern that teaches new players about charge attacks and bad hit zones with its head. It's a great monster, although very few people are gonna write home about him. Barroth is an overall good early to mid-game monster. A unique, fun design that isn't unrealistic. A really cool ecology that translates into a fun and engaging mechanic for his hunt, although his attacks can feel a bit basic at times. 3 stars. Barroth is the definition of a comfort monster. He's not super groundbreaking or has an amazing fight or ecology, but he's just a simple, fun monster that gets you warmed up for the bigger fights to come. Barroth just needs something new to really stand out, such as using his mud more, or using his funny train whistle for more sound attacks, because he's starting to get overshadowed by more modern brutes like Glavenus or Bonbro. Number 136. White Monoblos. White Monoblos in 4U is one of my favorite fights during my last playthrough. Absolutely great battle, only the locale takes away from the encounters. I'm not a fan of the particular expedition zones that they use. Also, the armor is pretty cracked. Heroics 2 and a few other good skills make Insect Glaive into more of a blender if you're willing to risk it for the biscuit. It's more Monoblos fun. I love the white color more than the desert sand color, plus he has this cute little animation tick before charging that isn't present in the regular Monoblos. Capcom needs to bring Monoblos back. Plus, maybe make a plushie for me to add to my Monster Hunter army. 5 out of 5. Okay, so I really think the best part about fighting white Monoblos is actually just seeing white Monoblos. The fact that it's so rare and the phantom white color just makes it look like a ghost or something. Obviously, I want to see him come back, but they really got to change the monster up. Maybe give him some tricky, unorthodox attacks with the horn, let him use it like a lance or something. I don't care if it shoots the horn off of its face like a Wormstake or a Dragonator, just something different from Diablos and different from whatever the new Monoblos would be. Number 135. Berserk Tetsucabra. Aesthetically, he's my favorite subspecies. Something about the rich emerald green and the lava red face just gives him this kinda ancient Chinese beast feel. The fight ain't half bad either. Evolves the concept of the boulders to both explode and have rolling physics. Not the craziest, but not dull either. 4 out of 5. I love fighting this guy during a solar eclipse. I feel like Berserk gets no love, but I think he's pretty stellar subspecies. He looks great, he's got cool additions and changes. I really appreciate Berserk Tetsucabra. May he one day return so the people can remember that he was indeed pretty sick. 4.2 stars. Berserk Tetsucabra is so dumb, and I love him. It's literally just my favorite monster, but he explodes. His rocks literally blow up in his face. Monster Hunter is established with monsters like Brachydios that giving a monster explosions makes it like 50% cooler. I hope he comes back along with the base species, and I hope he keeps getting to just blow himself up. 5 stars. 4 out of 5 for me. Using Blast with his normal attacks is pretty cool, and the color is better for the animal type. Still doesn't use the tongue for attacks though, that could be something neat. Number 134. Seltas. For the time, Seltas was really unique. Apart from the crabs, there hasn't been anything quite like him in the series, and I'm sure it must have been quite a shock playing 4 and expecting some kind of bird wyvern, but instead you get this. However, his fight isn't anything to write home about, and he really is meant for the Seltas Queen fight. All in all, a solid starter monster that gets quite the glow up once you make it to his queen. 4 stars. Such an awesome and unique entry-level monster. So many people will disregard him until he's with his queen, but you usually expect like a raptor or something at the beginning of a game. Nope. Big flying beetle. Also, not many intro monsters get a second chance to shine like he does. I really hope we get more giant bugs in the future. 4U was my first game, and this was a great starting fight. Its charge attack being used twice in rage mode taught me to pay attention to the full length of a monster attack and patterns to be patient, and its height above the ground forced me to not always use the same moves and learn what my weapon could actually do. It's easy and it's not that strong, but it lets you know when and how you mess up and lets you know how you can prevent those mistakes. 4 out of 5. Seltas suffers from success. The whole concept of Seltas and Seltas Queen is so interesting and cool that you really have to look at them as a whole package. Looking at each part separately, Seltas begins to fall apart. On his own, he has one of the smallest movesets in the series' history, falling behind even some other starter monsters. With the enhanced monster interactions of recent games, I really hope that Bug Boyo makes his way back into Wilds. 4 stars. Seltas is pathetically easy, but in a good way. As the main target, he has a few moves that could keep you on your toes, but he's also as fragile as glass. When he's paired with his abusive girlfriend, he becomes a lackey that adds on to the current fight, instead of the cluster that goes on when 2 different monsters are fighting you at the same time normally. He's great with the queen, but by himself, he's only a strong 3 out of 5. Number 133, Royal Ludroth. For the first aquatic monster in 3U, he was a pretty good starting point. He has a few projectiles, that one spin move that he constantly spams, and a lot of breakable parts, along with a very cuttable tail. He can be a little annoying for beginners, but Royal Ludroth is a good monster overall. I've heard that his Swax is pretty decent in 3U, but personally never used it. 4 out of 5. At least it's not purple. This is how you make an awesome lower tier monster. It has a great design and an enjoyable fight, plus some unique behaviors, like when it restores stamina through water. Royal Ludroth really shows you the potential of Leviathans right from the get-go. Royal Ludroth is an amazing intro to Leviathans. He's big and scary enough to make you be cautious around him, but still, he's able to be kinda cute and adorable enough after you fought him for the first couple of times. 4 out of 5. Fun fact, he's also canonically the monster who gets laid the most. Homie put ShamWows to shame. Hot take? Cold take? And I'll just say it, Royal Ludroth is one of the best low power monsters in the entire series, bar none. He feels fair compared to some of the some monsters like to pull, like Rathian run around like a headless chicken. His attacks are easy to space around, but they still challenge you to pay close attention to where you can and can't roll. The ecology is amazing as well. The idea of a sponge lion lizard is so damn cool. The way the mane deteriorates and dehydrates is a fun, responsive part break. And on top of that, it actually pulls elements from his written ecology and shows it in the gameplay instead of just telling you that that's a thing he can do. I also have personal ties with this monster, as aside from Tetranodon, this was my first and still is my favorite monster. Tetranodon helped me pave the path for me liking water monsters as much as I do. It was essentially love at first sight. I fought him once and loved the look, the fight, the armor, and even the weapons were good. Retrospectively, I'm so glad this stupid lizard was added into Monster Hunter Rise, because he was the driving force for me to push further into this series by being something I could attach to. I will always love this cute and spongy boy for being the catalyst of me enjoying this awesome game series. Sincerely, a Royal Ludroth lover.